How's it going, guys? It's MexiGary here, and it's time for Lovely Stuff, episode number 9. I did that in German this week for some reason. We only talk about lovely things here, like music, comedy, gear, equipment, movies, games, and I can't wait to tell you what I've been up to this week. But first of all, we're talking about the new well, it's kind of new. It's a few years old now, I guess, but, you know, in the grand scheme of things, it's pretty new. It's the Telecaster... It's a Telecaster Deluxe Paranormal Troublemaker. I don't know if I got those words in the right order there. There's so many of them. But it's the black one. It's the piano black with the small white scratch plate. And it comes as stock with 2 coil tappable humbuckers. And the hardware is just a beautiful guitar. I'll try and put a picture up just now so you can have a look. There. And... it's a beautiful looking guitar. It's a Squier. It's only £500, and it's honestly, it's the closest thing Fender has ever done to get close to a Les Paul, in my opinion. You guys might have other ideas of what their closest thing to Les Paul is, but I've been on this planet for 41 years. Been doing it for 25. I tell you what, I've tried all the Tele Deluxes that came before. You know, the early ones, the late ones, and I tell you what, this is the closest thing. It just feels like the perfect... It doesn't feel like a Les Paul, and it doesn't feel like a Telecaster, but it feels closer to the middle ground between the two of those that I've ever played. You know, it just... I'm trying to describe why, and I think it's because of the balance. Like, Les Pauls were great at, they're quite heavy, and this is not quite as heavy as a Les Paul, but it's the heaviest Telecaster that I've played in a long time, apart from the old vintage ones, you know, because they were made with fucking mahogany and all that shit, which you don't want to be playing for a 4-hour gig, you know, but at the same time, it's more well-balanced than a Les Paul, because sometimes with a Les Paul, or especially an SG, you find that the neck will, if you let it go and just let it do its own thing, the neck will tilt down. So I was like, all right, well, I love Fenders. I love the weight of Fenders. I love the balance of Fenders. I love the tone of Fenders. I love the simplicity of Fenders. The only thing I don't like so far about this, and I know this is a total niggle, because, you know, I chose the guitar, but I'm just so used to, like, the volume pot being right there. You know, I like rolling the volume. I feel like and it's only because I'm not used to playing Gibsons. I'm not used to playing the Gibson, the 2-volume and 2-tone configuration. I just need to get used to it. Not only that, but this one's got the witch hat knobs. I know I can change them. I know all of this shit, but it's just a bit weird to, like, have to, when I'm playing and I'm singing at the same time and fucking about with my pedals, and also to bring into that the idea that I've got to reach down and find the volume for usually the bridge pickup, you know. I like rolling that one up and down. I very rarely use the neck on its own, but having said that, it's not for playing, for me, it's not for playing, like, articulate blues stuff on. It's just for rocking the fuck out on and just having a lovely guitar. You can take about, it's only £500. You take it about to these dive bars, you know, dodgy wedding gigs, whatever, where you're set up on the dance floor. You don't really, I mean, I actually love it so much now that I do care, but the reason I bought it was so that I could have a guitar like that I don't care if somebody bumps into me or, like, spills a pint, you know, or it gets dinged. But now that I've played it so much, I love it so much. The neck is beautiful. Even Ian Nicol that does my guitar setups, he was like, are you sure this is a Squier? Or, like, you know, obviously he knows it was, but, you know, this is like the nicest Squier neck that I've played in a long time. It's just very well, it is lacquered. So if you're not into lacquered necks, you might not like the back of it. But the front of it is absolutely beautiful. It's a little bit, I think it's the 7.5 radius, so you might not like it if you're into using capos a lot. which most Fender players are not anyway. Usually that's, for acoustics or Gibsons and whatnot, because most Fenders have got like the 7.5 anyway. But this actually might have the 9.5, but it's still. Maybe I'm using, because you can get different capos, can't you? You can get straight capos and you can get kind of curved capos. Maybe I'm using the wrong one. But anyway, we'll look into that a little bit more. But the one that I've been using is like, it doesn't quite cover the radius. But anyway, that's not the guitar's fault. That's my fault for picking the wrong capo, or capo, as you guys across the pond call it. But anyway, I want to talk a little bit about the pickups, because the original humbuckers that came with them seemed great at first. There was no buzzing. It was just obviously because they're buckers, but even on the split coil settings, they were great. Very little buzzing compared to what you get on a standard Strat. But over time, and like I say, I only had it like maybe I've had it for about 6 months now that I think about it. But it just started to feel a bit, the pickups just started to feel a bit cheap when I compared it to my better guitars. Like, obviously I bought it as a dive bar guitar, or a dive, there's something in there. I could call it no, it's just a dive guitar, right? I was going to say like a dive git bar or something like that, but that wordplay is completely useless. So I used it for some dive bar gigs, and then I started using it at weddings. But the thing is, at weddings, I take my good guitars, usually like the Gibson 339, and my Fender Strat, or might even have taken my SG a couple of times, which has got a whole lot of humbuckers in it. So when you compare these Squier pickups to, even though the humbuckers, comparing them to these professional humbucker guitars, it's got a lot to be desired. It's a little bit muddy. You've got to dial in a bit more presence or treble on the amp, which is understandable. The guitar's 400 quid compared to like $2,500. So what do you want? Do you want something you can dive about with, or do you want something that's professional? Although, having said that, I have already used it on a couple of like pro, well, not pro, because we're not like fucking, Foo Fighters or whatever it is. I'm not exactly Joe Bonamassa, but we're at the level where we're doing like professional videos and stuff like that. I have used it on that kind of thing, and it worked well. It just needed a wee pickup boost pedal in the meantime, before it goes into the amp, just to keep it at the level of the other guitars. So all I would say was, definitely give it a shot, but it's a very, very competent guitar if you don't mind changing the pickups out. So what I did was I got a couple of Tone Rider Rebel P90s, Rebel 90s, right? Now, you know how much I love P90s if you've listened to me on this before, or you've saw some of my videos demonstrating them. Now, the other guitar that the closest guitar I have for a comparison is what I call White Trash, which is a parts caster that somebody in England put together, and it was purple originally, and then I bought it off a guy in Erskine called Stuart, and he's going to hate this if he hears this, because I keep going on about how much that was the guitar that he let get away. It was purple, it had some Warman P90s in it, so I bought it off it because I loved it. I think I swapped it for my Epiphone 335 actually, and it lasted a long time in its original condition, until I realised, come on, man, I'm not playing a purple guitar. It wasn't bright purple, it was... No, sorry, I'm talking shit. It was actually bright orange. It was bright orange. The same colour as the orange in the Resident Evil 7 Biohazard. It says VII. That's not it's not a major reference there. But if you could find that, it was that colour. So bright orange. And so the first thing I wanted to do after the first 3 months of playing it was I sent it down to a guy in England, the guy who originally built it, called Graham Graham Muir, Raygun Relics. And I asked him to change it to Pillar Box Red. And then I was going to like give it the old relic job again. But when it came back, it was actually purple. So that's when it was purple. So what I did was, after a couple of years of using it, it got to lockdown. So what I did was I learned, I did some YouTube investigation on how to relic or how to repaint a guitar. So I painted it white because, I don't know, I just always wanted a white relic guitar. I just think there's certain guitars that look cool when they're, I know, listen, I wouldn't do that to a guitar now. I'm talking about like 5 years ago. We're in 2025 now, right? This was 5 years ago. I repainted the guitar white. And then what I did was I put a couple of, my pal Ben gave me a Mississippi Queen, or Queen of Mississippi by Bare Knuckle bridge pickup. So then I bought, and it was amazing. So then I bought the neck to go with it. So I got a matching set in that. So that guitar is now relic white with the Queen of Mississippi, or Mississippi Queens, can't remember what they're called. But they're by Bare Knuckle. But the thing is, they're like 180 quid for one, right? Which is a great, it's not a waste of money because they're absolutely amazing sounding pickups. But then when I got the black Telecaster, the Troublemaker I'm talking about right now, what I did with that one was I put Tone Rider P90s in it, the Tone Rider Rebels, and Jesus Christ, I mean, there's almost no difference. Swear to God. I mean, if I swapped the pickups on the guitars, I would have a more accurate, result as to what the differences actually are. But no, honestly, I bloody love it, especially through the Blues Junior, because the Blues Junior can actually handle a lot because there's the V30, the vintage 30 speaker in it. But it couldn't quite handle the weight, and it just can't. Like a humbucker, especially a neck humbucker, and especially not a pro one. Like if it's a Squier one, you could probably get away with that Squier Telecaster as stock if you're going through like a proper Marshall stack or something with a bit of beef, or a Fender Twin. But I take a Blues Junior around, so I don't need that level of output on the pickups. So I started putting these. So I put these Troublemaker Paranormal. The Tone Rider Rebel 90s in it. And man, just obviously you lose the capacity to split the pickups because P90s, you can't split them. So I just chucked them straight in. And man, it's just absolutely, you get everything from Stevie Ray Vaughan to Rage Against the Machine to AC/DC to Oasis to whatever you want, really, with the right pedal in the middle. And the right pedal for me is a Blues Junior. I would have to say you would probably have to lean off the compressor. I like the compressor when you're using single coils into a smaller amp because it makes it sound a bit bigger, a bit more crushed, as if it's been driven. But I think with the higher output pickups, I would lean off the compressor. Probably don't use it at all until you think you need it. Which you probably won't. In my opinion, in my experience. But anyway, that's my experience with the Troublemaker, the Paranormal Troublemaker. So what else was I going to talk about? Heads versus combos. Right, recently I've been experimenting with, because my weapon of choice is the Blues Junior. Fender Blues Junior, Fender Special Run, the Red Sparkle, and I recently sold my spare Red Sparkle in order to buy a Marshall DSL 40. And to be fair, I thought it was going to completely transform my tone and turn me into a fucking rock god, but it didn't. It's a 1x12 Marshall combo. It does what it says in the tin. If you've got a vintage 30 and a Blues Junior, you don't need that because channel 2 on these amps are crap anyway. So you're always going to put pedals in the front of channel 1. You get a bit of crunch on channel 1 and you're fine. You know, you just put a Rat or a Blues Driver or an OD1 in front of it, or what's it, OD2? What's the one that everybody uses, the Yellow Boss one? Yeah, just go with that. Don't use channel 2. It's just because they share EQ. The two channels on the DSL-40, they share EQ, but yet the second channel needs a lot more bass. And I've tried it every which way. I tried going straight into the amp and trying to make the channels match, but they just don't. You know, the second channel is just a bit fizzy. It's a little bit toppy, loses a bit of beef. Even when you use the tone switch button, which I think affects both channels anyway. So yeah, no, I wouldn't bother trying to use the second channel unless that's your bag. Maybe you're just playing new metal and you want a cheap combo. That would be great for you. But, you know, I'm trying to do a lot of things, you know, with a tiny little trick bag here. That's the goal for everybody these days, I think. You know, we're all just trying to get the most out of the least gear, which is never going to happen. But that's what the pursuit of tone is all about, isn't it? You know, it's like, I only want to take one guitar, or obviously you want to bring a spare. I only want to bring the least amount of pedals, and I want to bring the most efficient small amp possible. So that's where I'm at right now, guys, to be honest. Anything with P90s, obviously I'm still using the GT1. I bloody love it. But one thing I'm experimenting with is taking a very light, it's called a Hoffnine, Hoffnine. So Hoffnine, the built-in Airdrie. It's a guy called Tom Mulroney. Look him up on Google and hook him up with yourselves if you want a custom-made cab. And to be honest, you're better off just asking him, you know, don't put a speaker in it. Just get a vintage 30 or get what your speaker of choice is, because he'll probably hook you up with... Whatever he hooks you up with is going to be great. It'll be a greenback or a creamback or something. And they're all great, but you're probably going to want to just use the solid cab that he's given you and just put whatever speaker you want or that you're used to. Could even be a G12 75T, or is it G12T 75? Just put one of them in it, because that's the most standard kind of rock speaker there is. And then if you want to level up, you know, you get the vintage 30. But if you want to go the other way, you can fuck about with the Eminence Legends, or you could try a creamback or a greenback, or a, you know, what about the 7080? The things that come in standard with the Laney cabs. You could try one of them. But ultimately, this is why I'm really enjoying using a separate cab now, because I'm really starting to work out what amp goes with what speaker. Like when you do that with combos, it's like, well, let's see what a Blues Junior sounds like with this speaker. And then you can swap the speakers out as much as you like, but you're always going to find one that fits. But what if you just had a cab and you swap the heads? You know, I mean, you could try it that way as well. I mean, there's a lot of people listening to this who have probably done it a million times. You know, you try, you got a cab with a speaker in it, and you just try a bunch of different heads. I've been doing it for years. I'm only talking about it now because it's the first time I've, you know, had a podcast. So I'm getting the chance to, basically, when I'm talking about this kind of stuff on the podcast, I'm talking about the last 20 years worth of shit I've been doing. But today I'm telling you what I've been doing for the last couple of weeks, and that is putting the vintage 30 in the Hoffnine cab. And what have I been doing? I've used the Hoffnine amp, which is a copy of that's the other thing, the 1x12 cab by Hoffnine is about the size of Hughes and Kettner Tubemeister 40 head. So it's only that wide. So you don't want to be using... I mean, you could, obviously, but it would just look weird if you used like a JCM, 2000 Marshall head with it through a 1x12. So what I've done is I've got this... I mean, I've had it for years. It's a Hoffnine... what the fuck is the name of it? Something 50. Sorry. Let me know if you want to know. But again, this guy, Tom Mulroney, and I'm not sponsored by him or anything, although I did get discounts at the time for buying the gear. because I was advertising for them at the time, but I'm not anymore. You know, this was like 8 years ago. So I'm using a Hoff 9 head through a Hoff 9 amp, but I've been trying the Dr. Z shit as well. So the Dr. Z Maz 38, no reverb, through the Vintage 30, and it just transformed it, you know, because I used to just take the amp and put it through whatever speakers were on the stage. But when you really get to know your speakers and you really get to know the pickups in your guitars, then the amp is actually, apart from the functionality of it with the channel switcher and all that, but I only use one channel anyway because I've got the pedals there on the GT1. So once you get to know that your pickups and your speaker, the amp is just functional as a single channel, like crunch, and how wide you can get your EQs to go. Like, you know, if one amp's not got enough treble or one amp's not got enough bass or whatever, you can switch out your amp head and still have the same rig, basically. So it's exciting for me to be trying that stuff out right now, because the Dr. Z stuff, like, you'd think like Dr. Z is like a country amp because Brad Paisley uses them. God, you know, the Maz is like more AC/DC. It's more like a Queen AC, like a classic rock kind of thing. It's got a really kind of mid-hump, which is really interesting if you want that. Sometimes it does my head in though, because that, I don't think it's the kind of amp that you want if you're the only guitar player in the band. It might be a great amp for somebody who's like an Angus Young kind of guy who's wanting to cut through a mix, but I don't think it covers all bases for me. But the only other Dr. Z that I've got at the moment is the Z-Rec, not the Z-Rec, the Stangray. And that's amazing, but it's only amazing at high output volumes. So what I use is a Black Bear attenuator through the back, and it goes in the effects loop, right? So it goes in the effects loop of the Dr. Z Stangray, so that you can turn the master up and get a really good, like, high crunch output sound, but you can turn the input down, so that even if you're using single coils, you're still going to get a good crunch sound out of that. You know, it could even be high output single coils. You know, I don't know if I would have to do that if I was using humbuckers. I think the humbuckers, especially on the Gibson 339, that would definitely get a bit of crunch out of it. But it would be a very sparkly crunch. It would be like like a Clapton-y kind of, even though Clapton used to use Marshalls when he was using, but you know when he does that kind of, got my 44, whenever he does the Freddie King thing, you know, he's using Fenders. And then Brad Paisley, you know, he uses quite high output pickups sometimes. I'm just saying, you can experiment with your heads if you've got a separate cab, whereas if you've got a Blues Junior or a Fender Twin, or even like I was saying, the Marshall DSL 40, you can't really do it that easily. You've really only got the speaker to play with. I know what you're going to say. You could take that speaker cable from the output, the speaker output on your combo, and put it into a cab, but that's a lot of gear to carry about. You know what I mean? I just think I'm getting to the point now where, because I want to fuck about with my tone, I kind of want to see what happens if I just have the cab with the one speaker in it, the Vintage 30, mess about with some different cabs, mess about with some different heads. I mean, and those three heads, the main three heads I'm talking about would be the Dr. Z Stangray, the Hoff 950, and the Hughes and Kettner Tubemeister 36. That's one amp that I will take to the grave. The Tubemeister 36, and they don't do them anymore, but they do a more versatile version of it. So my 36 is probably like, it must be about 12-year-old now, maybe even 15-year-old. But the new version of that has got all the same shit on it. I think it's got a slightly wider EQ scoop. It's got more interactive pedals in it. I think you get an actual pedal switcher with it, and it's got the red box DI out, so you can actually pick the cab simulation you want, whether it's 1x10, 1x12, 2x10, 2x12, or 4x12. I think that's what the options are. There might even be an 8x12 or 8x10 on there or something like that. So that would be crazy. Or 8x12. So you can simulate a Marshall stack by DIing it into your computer, and then you wouldn't have to use any impulse responses once you've got into Cubase or your DAW, whatever it might be, Pro Tools. So really interesting amp. Check out the Hughes and Kettner Tubemeister 40. I'm pretty sure that's what the new one is. It might be called the Tubemeister Pro. But yeah, anyway, sorry, it's been a totally geeky podcast today, guys. So do leave me some comments. Give me a like, if you've enjoyed the podcast today. It's MexiGary here talking about some gear, and I don't do that very often. I was going to talk about my new favourite TV series, two of them actually, because Black Mirror just came out. Was it 7 episodes? I just binged them all last night, and then I followed it up with episode 1 of series 2 of The Last of Us. So I might talk about that on the next podcast, guys. But MexiGary over and out. Don't forget to like, don't forget to subscribe, and more geeky gear chat coming your way next week. Check out my original music and the rest of the YouTube channel, and I'll catch you same time next week, motherfuckers.